The Blue Jewel.
Chapter 3. Part 4. The card game progressed well into the night, with only 4 players remaining, the middle-aged knight, 2 Tahas of the worst fame and the Denka. The others had either retired to their chambers or slept on their chairs. The game was about to be decided. ARIAN could hear perfectly what the players were talking about thanks to the silence that reigned inside the premises. "Well, Matasanos, I think your luck is over." The Denka's shrill and cheerful voice was unmistakable. "I disagree, Mr. Gosberg. Before attending to your lord, I think I will leave you without your gold." It was a more serene and calm voice. "I hope not." The Denka showed confidence in his tone of voice apart from having a good drunkenness. It was the decisive moment. The 4 players showed the cards. 2 Elven Kings. 3 Black Dragons. 4 Stars of Fire. The middle-aged man spoke with the satisfaction of one who knows he is the winner of the game. But the Denka with a smile grabbed his companion's hand to prevent him from taking the boat from the table. "Quiet, Doctor, 5 stone centaurs, won the game." The other 3 players were stunned to see how the little Denka laughed and jumped while he began to collect the dividends, but in one of his pirouettes, the Denka fell on his back and from his right sleeve 4 other stone centaurs flew to the ground, just in front of the other 3 players, astonished by the discovery of the traps of the Denka, especially since he wore a short sleeve. "Cheat! Stupid Denka! You will see what we do here to your ilk." The other 3 players were very enraged. If anything they hated in Xeres were the cheaters who proved to be better than the locals. The traps to the cards were punishable by death. It was a law of the streets of Xeres. The 3 players affected by the traps of the Denka grabbed him and took him out of the premises. The quartet went to the dark alley, where he gave the window of ARIAN's room and where most of the fights of the place ended. ARIAN was lucky he could follow the misadventures of the Denka. He stuck his head out a little to observe how the 4 players resolved their differences for the final result of the game. The 2 strongest, who were the Tahas, grabbed the little Denka by the arms while the former companion of the Denka stabbed him in the middle of the abdomen, thus used to die the tricksters outsiders who won in this city. Agnorok was bored, and although it was only the 3rd beer he started to be drunk. Something strange, but it was the first time he tasted Xeres beer. Maybe it was stronger than all the others. His vision was clouded. He lowered his head for a moment, and when he picked it up again, he watched as a young woman stared at him. The girl smiled slightly until she realized that he had noticed her gaze, but that eye contact was interrupted by a huge scream from Gosberg accompanied by a squeaky smile. After another beer he began to fall asleep. He could not help it. His vision was clouded and he noticed how the girl passed by him, but he could not react since he later fell asleep. When the half-orc woke up, he only got to see how they took Gosberg out of the tavern, and they did not seem very happy. The truth, it was difficult for him to get up and follow his companions out of the premises. Gosberg was bleeding profusely from the wound. The young woman expected to see the Denka agonize over his bad head, but that is not what happened. As soon as he was stabbed, the Denka rested his legs on his attacker's chest and threw him to the bottom of the alley where his back hit the wall hard. Then with great skill, he got rid of his 2 oppressors by means of a pirouette backwards, which left the 2 opponents astonished, and taking advantage of the break of his 2 rivals, the Denka took a dagger that he had hidden in one of his boots and threw it towards one of them. The gesture was incredibly fast, so much so that ARIAN herself doubted if she had seen it, but the truth is that one of the Tahas was dead instantly. The other Taha saw his dead companion on the ground and seemed to take more sincerity to the Denka, drew a short sword and slowly advanced towards his rival. At last he decided to attack the Denka, with a lunge towards the heart, but the Denka dodged it with great ease, taking advantage to place himself on the back of the Taha. With another quick gesture he took out another dagger and stuck it in the back of his neck, killing his rival on the spot. This crime caused the Denka to be back at the mercy of his former party partner who was already recovered from his previous blow, armed with a kind of knife. When he was about to attack the Denka appeared unexpectedly the other component of the trio, the young man with black hair who with a skillful lunge in the side, ended the life of his former partner. He could only utter a faint moan to fall to the ground and agonize spasming, until finally stopping. The fight had not lasted a minute. ARIAN was impressed and of course that crazy couple were in a good predicament. Gosberg knew that the wound was quite deep, and the amount of blood coming out of his body was getting bigger and bigger. It was too much. The Denka lost consciousness falling round to the ground. Agnorok didn't know what to do. They were in a mess. They had killed the only doctor who could cure the king and the Gosberg idiot was mortally wounded. If they did not end up in Xeres on the gallows, the king would behead them when they failed in their mission, and if by a miracle they saved their heads, their destiny would be to clean the sores of Almera of vermin. So was the half-orc evaluating the few options he had to survive when someone touched him from behind. Agnorok almost decapitated her with an instinctive gesture but stopped the lunge in time. It was the girl in the tavern. The girl did not speak. With a rag she made an emergency bandage to Gosberg. Then with his eyes and a sign, he ordered the half-orc to lift up the dying Denka. The young woman got up and returned to the inn followed by the half-orc carrying the wounded Denka. ARIAN's room was nearby and they made as little noise as possible. The half-orc without saying a word left ARIAN alone with the Denka for a moment. The young woman thought what the hell she was doing. She was helping two murderers, but the truth is that she had followed her instinct. She had no time for regrets now. The wound was deadly. The first thing was to contain the bleeding. At least it was a clean wound, a miracle. I did not know much about the anatomy of the Denkis, but there was no damaged organ. It was impossible. But it was not the time to think. So he did what he knew best, cure. With a little linen thread and an ivory needle made with a tusk of a sea mountain, I managed to make a good suture. Then I had saved dried leaves of mantissa. He moistened them with a little water and made a paste that he applied to the wound. At the end of the operation the half-orc was already back in the room. He had brought the 2 bags that he and the Denka were carrying. ARIAN told him that he will incorporate the Denka and made a good bandage. At least the wound had stopped bleeding. Agnorok knew how to make a living. Making the right and quick decisions was essential. The first thing was to get things back, so he took a chance and left Gosberg with the young woman alone and went for her backpacks. There was no one, all desert. Lucky. He hid the corpses so that they were not discovered with the naked eye, but he could not do anything to clean the blood. He only tried that the trace of blood did not take them to ARIAN's room. They would gain some time which they did not have. It will get fine. You just have to rest a little. ARIAN spoke to the young man once the situation was stabilized. We don't have much time, but thank you very much. I didn't know what to do. Thank you. You're in a good mess, you know. Agnorok sat on the floor. His head still had a bottle because of that beer. The girl's accent was strange. She pronounced the vowels very nasally and it was difficult for her in her current state to understand her. He tried to be nicer than usual. You don't know it well. Sorry, what's your name? ARIAN. I am Agnorok and you can call the wounded Gosberg. The young woman looked at the Denka who slept with a face of absolute placidity, something strange for the wound she suffered. A Denka. That Denka just my life. In short, nothing can be done, we have to rest a little. Agnorok took a seat on the ground near the entrance and closed his eyes. ARIAN was surprised by the calmness of these 2 hustlers could betray them and call the guard. How? Silly, if she had just saved them. She also improvised a bed with a blanket and decided to try to get some sleep. The alley of Ordoni's place was a place where blood and scoring were very frequent, something that ARIAN had not noticed during his stay. So a few more traces of blood would not surprise anyone. Also at that time no one was in a position to ask anything. It was an area little frequented by the royal guard. At the moment they were lucky, their crime would go unnoticed for a few hours. When ARIAN woke up it was already dawn. Agnorok was not in the room. She went to inspect how her patient was sleeping peacefully. The bandage had no trace of blood. That wasn't possible, the wound was so deep. Where am I? ARIAN slapped. Gosberg opened his eyes, his voice showed only drowsiness but no pain or worry. In my room. You should not cheat when you play cards in these places, it is punishable by death. The young woman was bothered by the carefree tone of the Denker, or was either unconscious or her memory failed. I wasn't the only one cheating, I just did it better than them. Anyway now they will have other worries. The Denker looked at the young woman again, but in his gaze there was only curiosity about his unknown benefactor. It took a while until he noticed the bandage on the abdomen, and to the surprise of the young woman he took it off. I was totally scarred. Hey, what a good job, it usually takes a week to close, look, only a couple of hours and like new. He carefully put the bandage back on without showing any sign of pain. It was impossible, she had sutured the wound herself, it would take a month hopefully, but only 3 hours had passed. ARIAN had to sit up on the bed. This was beyond him.